right. I'm happy to see y'all here. It's exciting. It's weird to like be away from Utah for a month and then see all of your half faces again. It's great. Okay, guys, I'm just going to get the night started with our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that this land, which is named for the Ute tribe, is the traditional and ancestral homeland of the Shoshone, Paiute, Goshute, and Ute tribes. The University of Utah recognizes and respects the enduring relationship that exists between many indigenous peoples and their traditional homelands. We respect the sovereign relationship between tribes, states, and the federal government, and we affirm that the University of Utah's commitment to a partnership with Native nations and urban Indian communities through research, education, and community outreach activities. So yes, again, welcome everybody. Before we kick off the evening and the reading, I just wanted to sort of chat a bit about an exciting changing of the guard that we've got going on in GWS. So Alan, after years of impassioned service to GWS, is moving on to other things, but I'd just like to take a moment to appreciate and applaud Alan for all of his work that he's done to make the series what it's been. You'll be missed, Alan. I know you'll be here, though, to stack chairs in the coming years. So, but I'd also like to welcome Sadie Hoagland, who will be our new GWS coordinator. Sadie is actually a graduate from the U of Utah PhD program, which is really exciting. A fiction writer and has 2 books of fiction out, and 1 is forthcoming. So please, if you'd join me in welcoming Sadie to the stage and welcoming Sadie to our GWS team and University of Utah community. So.
Thank you, Aristotle, and echoing the gratitude for Alan, too. He has been amazing in helping me transition and is going to be helping this semester, and I'm so appreciative of that. It's really great. And yeah, I'm a graduate, and I'm really looking forward to getting to know the current graduate students. I've also been teaching in a PhD program, so I'm looking forward to kind of figuring out what type of resource I can be for you all on staff as well. So yes, thank you. The Guest Writers Series is supported by the University of Utah's English Department and Office of the Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs. GWS has received funding from Salt Lake City Zoo, Arts and Parks, and Utah Humanities, which empowers groups and individuals to improve their communities through active engagement in the humanities. This series is also supported in part by Utah Arts and Museums, with funding from the state of Utah and the National Endowment for the Arts. I'd also like to thank our hosts this evening, Salt Lake City Arts Council here at Finch Lane Gallery, and the King's English Bookshop is here with books for purchase in the back right there. If you haven't already, please silence your phone. A couple of reminders, and then I will get to introduce the next introducer. It's like a nesting doll of introductions, but isn't that little wooden baby always a delight? And I think our readers tonight will be as well. So the reminders are that the writers are going to be available for discussion tomorrow at 12 p.m. here for a colloquium. We have some fun upcoming events. March 23rd, we have Seshi Foster and Arturo Romo as part of the GWS series. And then just 1 week later, Jess Arndt will be here for the entire week and have a Thursday night reading as well that week on March 30th. And I want to announce, too, that there are a couple spots left for manuscript consultations, so please email me, graduate students, if you're interested in that. All right. I'd like to invite Isaac Willis up to the stage to introduce Matthew Olzmann. Thank you.
Thanks, Sadie. Hello, everybody. Can everyone hear me even all the way in the back? Thumbs up? Perfect. 2 American institutions have come under scrutiny in recent history: poetry and the United States Postal Service. The first after the proliferation and professionalization of creative writing programs, the second by an administration whose president was careless with, among many things, language. This is just to say it was a pleasure to spend time last fall in Paisley's workshop reading and thinking through Matthew Olzmann's latest collection, Constellation Route, published by Alice James just last year. In it, Olzmann figures a constellation of epistolary poems, letters transformed to and by verse, along the way borrowing, extending, and riffing on the USPS's official glossary of postal terminology. Day 0, for instance, is the quote, "Date a mail piece enters the mail stream and the clock starts for purposes of service performance measurement," end quote. In Constellation Route, Day 0 serves as the frontispiece poem, painting a portrait of a solitary old man who may be alone in his home or his dream. He wants to tell you about this place, Olzmann writes. This world he's conjured while sleeping. He writes your name on his favorite stationery. Letters make the ephemeral concrete. You can hold desire in your hands. We are reminded of that desire, the anticipation of something as simple as a letter in the mail. Olzmann's letters to subjects as varied as Bruce Wayne, nature defacers, and car radiators speak to our shared human experience and our need to communicate those experiences to each other. What better medium than the letter? What better form than poetry, both of which celebrate language and connection to explore these notions? We have reason, of course, to be anxious. If you read enough op-eds on the state of creative writing, the post office, the country, it's easy to feel isolated, angry. And of course, Olzmann explores those tensions we experience day to day, from race relations in a suburban neighborhood to toxic masculine anger triggered by Will Shatner's voice. The poet allows all his subjects and images to speak together as the route we trace through life's joys, angers, resentments, and griefs. Letters are inspired by landscapes, by fragments of a TV show, and other poets. Other poets, too, speak in and through these pages in their own letters back to Olzmann, another testament to the ongoing collaborative project of language and meaning-making Constellation Route furthers. Olzmann says in one poem, "I made a miniature fire, and I'll send it to you if you think it will help." The poet here is a messenger god, a postal worker in shorts and a straw hat, delivering little fires, stars of poems that make up a complex constellation. Olzmann has two other collections with Alice James, Contradictions in the Design and Mezzanines, his debut collection, which was selected for the Kundiman Prize. Other writing has appeared in Best American Poetry, Kenyon Review, New England Review, Brevity, and elsewhere. In the past, he's received fellowships from the Kresge Arts Foundation, Breadloaf, and MacDowell. He teaches at Dartmouth and in the MFA Program for Writers at Warren Wilson College. Please join me in welcoming to the mic, Matthew Olzmann.
All right, so before we go any further, I want to publicly acknowledge that I love every person in this room. I mean it. We've traveled from all over to be here, and I love each of you, all of you, every last one of you except Harold. But the rest of you I love fervently and without limitation. It's important you believe this is a boundless love, rhapsodic, without timidity or hesitation, because everyone is deserving of compassion. Absolutely everyone, just not Harold. But for the rest of you, this affection is perfect, unconditional, and free. Not unconditional with air quotes around it. Not unconditional like a gatekeeper in the garden saying, "Look at the fruit, but do not shovel it into thy weird little face." Saying, "Love me and none other." Saying, "The firstborn, the locust, the welt of grief I've pressed upon your back." This is a truly unstoppable wave of tenderness that doesn't traffic in punishment or retribution. In ethically challenged times, it's important to have a stringent moral code, steadfast as the oak whose taproot plunges into the earth, deep enough to allow the tree to never waver, never sway, never give in to the winds of convenience or malice. And therefore, this faultless love never marches into the frostbitten fields or down the streets of its numerous enemies to shout something like, "Oh, motherfuckers, I am petty and malevolent, and I will track you through the sleet to show you all the ways in which your world can fracture and die." This love would never think to say something like that. Instead, it reaches with a gentle hand, a heart full of benignities, and an unflinching recognition that, without question, there is no living soul unworthy of forgiveness except Harold and now Marcus and possibly Mackenzie, but really no one else beyond redemption. It is a love for which there are no omissions, exclusions, no rules or fine print on this contract, which is binding. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to read a few poems from this book, Constellation Route, and then a few other poems. And I was told to read for between 20 to 25 minutes, and I know that like poetry time seems to function differently. So if anyone's like, "Oh my God, 20 to 25 minutes, this is going to last forever," I have like a couple mile markers for you. When I start talking to an invisible horse, we're probably more than halfway done, and when I get to and when I start talking to walruses, we're basically at the end, and then I will introduce Carolyn. And I wanted to thank Paisley for inviting me to judge this contest, and Alan and Sadie for coordinating this visit. This poem is a letter to Bruce Wayne, which I normally wouldn't offer any introduction for, but recently when I read this, the first question I got afterward was like, "That was great. Who's Bruce Wayne?" So Bruce Wayne is Batman's alter ego. Letter to Bruce Wayne. A good place to hide a drop of water is a stream. A good place to hide a stream is beneath an ocean. A good place to hide a man is among thousands of men. Watch how they rush through the city like water through a ravine. I've searched many famous cities for you. There are 3 listings for Bruce Wayne in Houston, 2 in Pittsburgh, 1 in Miami, and 1 in LA. In Tampa, Bruce Wayne is a retired chemistry teacher. In Flagstaff, he drives a taxi and hopes to procure a diamond for his soon-to-be fiancée. A good place to hide a star is a galaxy. A good place to hide a galaxy is a universe. Look at the night sky. Justice used to be a cowl and cape, the flicker of wings under an ateliated moon, and you, like a gargoyle, crouched atop some stone edifice. To conceal a universe, place it in a multiverse, that hypothetical clutch of alternate realities. The dilemma of the word alternate is how it implies a norm, a progenitor stream from which the alternate diverges. Which is the alternate? Which is right here, right now? There is no such thing as Gotham City, but here is Gotham City, and I've been so naive, believing the truth of the old mythologies, how they promised a recognizable villain, a clown with a ruby-slashed mouth, a lunatic's laugh. In the universe where I exist, supervillains look like everyone else. Give them an old flannel to wear and a square jawline to smile at the world, and suddenly they're hanging a noose in a middle school bathroom. They're shouting, "Get out of my country," from the window of a passing car. They're pulling a pistol in a crowded barroom or bus stop or the middle of the street. They could be anyone. They could be everywhere. A good place to hide a sociopath is a full-length mirror. A good place to hide that mirror is the middle of America. In the battle of good versus evil, I was so certain good would win. Now I just hope something good will survive. Get a job cutting hair or selling cars. Make it home in time for dinner. I suspect there's a parallel dimension where you, dear vigilante, long for this as well. To have a normal life is victory enough. To remain anonymous and not be spat upon on the subway. In Boston, Bruce Wayne owns a pawn shop. In Milwaukee, he plays pinochle and feeds stray cats. In New Hampshire, he goes fly fishing on the Sugar River, reels in one brook trout after another. When he removes the hook from a mouth, he might place the fish into a cooler, or he might set it back into a stream. The alternate or the original. He's no longer certain in which he stands. Letter to someone living 50 years from now. Most likely, you think we hated the elephant, the golden toad, the thylacine, and all variations of whale harpooned or hacked into extinction. It must seem like we sought to leave you nothing but benzene, mercury, the stomachs of seagulls rippled with jet fuel and plastic. You probably doubt we were capable of joy, but I assure you we were. We still had the night sky back then, and like our ancestors, we admired its illuminated doodles of scorpion outlines and upside-down ladles. Absolutely, there were some forests left. Absolutely, we still had some lakes. I'm saying it wasn't all lead paint and sulfur dioxide. There were bees back then, and they pollinated a euphoria of flowers so we might contemplate the great mysteries and finally ask, "Hey guys, what's transcendence?" And then all the bees were dead. This is a letter to the person who, during the Q&A session after the reading, asked for career advice. The confusion you feel is not your fault. When we were younger, guidance counselors steered us toward respectable occupations: doctor, lawyer, pharmacist, dentist. Not once did they say exorcist, snake milker, or race car helmet tester. Always investment banker, IT specialist, marketing associate, never rodeo clown, never air guitar soloist, chainsaw juggler, or miniature golf windmill maker. In this country, in the year I was born, some 3.1 million other people were also born, each with their own destiny, the lines of their palms predicting an incandescent future. Were all of them supposed to be strategy consultants and commodity analysts? Water slide companies pay people to slide down water slides to evaluate their product. Somehow that is a legitimate job. So is naming nail polish colors. Were either of these presented as options? You need to follow your passion, as long as your passion is not a sestina and is definitely a hedge fund. If I could do it over, I'd suggest an entry-level position standing by a riverbank, or a middle management opportunity winding like fog through the sugar maples of New England. There's a catastrophic shortage of bagpipe players, tombstone sculptors, and tightrope walkers. When they tell you about the road ahead, they forget the quadrillion other roads. You'll know which one is yours because it fills you with astonishment or ends with you being reborn as an alpine ibex, a gravity-defying goat, able to leap 7 feet in the air, find footholds where none exist, and, without imagining it could ever be anything else, scale a vertical sheet of solid rock to find some branches, twigs, or wild berries to devour. Letter written while waiting in line at Comic-Con. Klingon, Parseltongue, Na'vi. People invent imaginary languages so imaginary citizens of imaginary worlds can speak to one another. Elvish, Ewokese, Dothraki. You can learn these languages, come to a convention with your face painted blue or a leather scabbard bolted to your back and talk to people who will understand you. I understand what language feels like when you're not understood. More than once, I thought some other planet might be my home. Last week in an alley, I saw one man punch another man until neither looked like a person. There are hundreds of reasons like this to yearn to be from some other galaxy, century, or dimension. Reasons to put on a spacesuit or wizard's cloak and hope no one will recognize you. But it's not these costumes that amaze me. It's always been the languages, the way they reach for something that can't be said in our tongue. In the only language I know, there are not enough words for parabola or isotope, too few phrases to say I'm sorry or I'm glad that I found you. Though we've been married for years, I wish we met when we were children. If we had known each other in the year you spent alone on Earth without one friend, we could have been aliens together. I'd have those green four-fingered hands, you with your glow-in-the-dark antennae, words in the form of strange whirling noises, low chirping machine music, wisps of static, lamentations of rain. Only you and I would know what these sounds meant. So these, the rest of these poems are from other projects. This is called My Invisible Horse and the Speed of Human Decency. People always tell me don't put the cart before the horse, which is curious because I don't have a horse. Is this some new advancement in public shaming? Repeatedly drawing one's attention to that which one is currently not and never has been in possession of? If ever I happen to obtain a Clydesdale, then I'll align absolutely it to its proper position in relation to the cart. But I can't do that because all I have is the cart. One solitary cart, a little grief wagon that goes precisely nowhere, along with apparently one invisible horse which does not pull, does not haul, does not in any fashion budge, impel, or tow my disaster buggy up the hill or down the road. I'm not asking for much, a more tender world with less hatred strutting the streets, perhaps a downtick in state-sanctioned violence against civilians, wind through the trees, water under the bridge, kindness. LOL, says the world. These things take time, says the office of disappointment. Change cannot be rushed, says the round table of my smartest friends. Then together they say, the cart. They say, the horse. They say, haven't we told you this already? And so my invisible horse remains standing where it previously stood, between hot dog stands and hallelujahs, between the NASDAQ and the moon's adumbral visage, between the status quo and the great filter. And I can see that it's not my horse's fault, being invisible and not existing, how he's the product of both my imagination and the greater good's failure of imagination. Watch how I press my hand against his translucent flank, how I hold 2 sugar cubes to his hypothetical mouth, how I say I want to believe in him, speaking softly into his missing ear. First foray into apophatic theology. And then God is not like the sound the kindling makes as it meets the match head, not like the buoy in the bay invisible at night, not like the gravity calling to the pair on the bow above the field, nor the beam from which the boy you knew roped a knot around his neck to yoke this life to the next, if there is a next, and if not, then to nothingness. God is not like nothingness. If God transcends all, then God transcends language. If God transcends language, we cannot deploy language to particularize God. If we cannot articulate what God is, we can only announce what God is not. This is how I approach the divine. I study the corona that circles the eclipse, which I've been told not to look at. Still, there's some elegance in the bright blur of pain behind my eyes. And so, unable to see the center, I trace the edges. I outline the mystery's border, like making chalk silhouettes of the body at a murder investigation, a technique no detective actually uses as it would contaminate the evidence. God is not the evidence, not the residue, not the shell casings, the blood pattern, or the partial fingerprint, not the container or the object emptied. I'm not saying God is the negation. I'm saying the crime scene has been compromised. I'm the one who compromised it. So I thought I would try to read a few of the poems that I've been working on from a series that I've been working on most recently. I've mostly been writing like wedding poems. I've been at for poets in the room, I think the only time you're really going to feel like you are people truly appreciate you is like when they're getting married and they're like, you're a poet, can you read a poem at my wedding? And if it hasn't happened, it will happen. And so I've been trying to take that responsibility seriously, because I got asked to read a poem at a friend's wedding, and then another friend, and then my sister. And so I've been trying to write like poems for these things, and I've been mostly not successful, but have been having fun with it. So if any of you need a poem, if any of you are getting married and you need a poem that's just gonna alienate most of the people there, I've got you covered. So this is epithalamium that refuses to ignore the possibility of a zombie apocalypse. Let's be honest. What each of us wants is to never get eaten by zombies, and the shotgun-shaped truth of the matter is we're less likely to be ravaged by the ravenous appetites of the dead if someone just loves us. We each need a partner posted on the roof, someone with a crossbow watching the high cornfields for signs of movement. There needs to be someone willing to brave the basement during the power outage, someone to descend the midnight staircase to repair the generator. We need a reserve supply of bandages, fragmentation grenades, and flamethrowers, just in case the grid goes down. I'm afraid of dying alone, and I imagine I'm not alone in that fear. Those of us who've known sorrow know the world is populated by those who will respond to our outstretched arms by eating our outstretched arms. The God-honest miracle we celebrate here today is these gentle and soon-to-be betrothed friends of ours have found in each other a companion willing to declare in public, I promise to never eat your extremities, kidneys, or brains, and furthermore, I vow to protect you from those who would. We call this commitment marriage, and there is no greater honor than to say, even when humanity withers around us, I will guard the humanity that stirs, restless and delicate, like a fawn in a field of trillium in you. If the lights in the city go dark, if the highways fall silent, if every radio is filled with static, if you are surrounded by a flesh-eating foulness and running low on ammo, I will love you like an unmarked helicopter flying in from the horizon. I will hover over you, and with my machine gunners struggling to hold the danger back, I will lower the rope ladder to meet you. So that one I actually did get to read. Was read at a wedding, and this next one was not. This is epithalamium during mating season. When the testicles of the marsupial mouse begin to disintegrate, he swells with a panic that drives him to have sex until he dies. Tradition dictates that the female black widow eats her mate, and that practice also exists among the greater praying mantis community. Meanwhile, these two people keep staring into each other's eyes, saying, I do, I do, I do. But what exactly is it that they do? Do they fight lions or guard their eggs while nesting on the side of an active volcano? Probably not. But does that mean their devotion is any less enduring, any less fervent or profound than that of the hippopotamus who sprays its feces into the sky to attract a mate? No. It means we're lucky to be human, capable of thinking this through before falling dead from the amorous air, as is the custom of the common honeybee. Any wild thing can feel. Any feeling can propel an animal forward. Sometimes the difference between instinct and love is hesitation, the capacity to stand at the inception of some passionate wilderness, understand its magnitude, its peril, and then enter, not because the marionette strings of compulsion and desire yank us forward, but because we're summoned into the immensity of and by our own free will, and that is what we want. That is what we choose. And we've arrived at my last poem, commencement speech delivered to a herd of walrus calves. Young walruses, we Young walruses, we all must adapt. For example, some of your ancestors gouged their way through the world with 4 tusks, but now you can grow only 2. It's hard to say what evolution plans for your kind, but if given a choice, you should put in a request for thumbs. Anyway, congratulations. You're entering a world that's increasingly hostile and cruel and full of people who will never take you seriously, though that will be a mistake on their end. You are more tenacious than they know. You will be a fierce and loyal defender of those you love. You will fight polar bears when they attack your friends, and sometimes you will win. Of course, Odds always favor the polar bear, but that's not the point. The point here is courage. The point is bravery. The point is that you are all fighters, even when the fight in which you find yourself ensures unpleasant things will happen to you. For example, the bear will gnaw apart your skull or neck until you stop that annoying twitching. Then it will eat your skin, all of it, then blubber, then muscle, then the tears of your loved ones in that order. It will savor every bite, and you will just suffer until the emptiness can wash over you. The good news is things change. For example, the environment. Climate change indeed is bad for you, but it's way worse for polar bears, whose conservation status is now listed as vulnerable, which is one step removed from endangered, which is one step removed from extinct, which is a synonym for hooray, none of you get eaten. I suppose this will make some people sad. Even now, they're out there posting pictures of disconsolate polar bear cubs on melting ice floes, drifting toward a well-deserved oblivion. They say, we need to stop this. They say, we need to do something now. These people are not your friends. One cannot be on both Team Walrus and Team Polar Bear at the same time. I'm not saying these people are evil. I'm saying it's time to choose a side. I'm saying sharpen your tusks, young calves. Your enemies are devious. You need to train yourself to do what they won't expect. Use computers, invest in renewable energies, read Zbigniew of Herbert. Unrelatedly, your whiskers make you appear to have mustaches, which, seeing as you're not even toddlers yet, is remarkably unsettling. Babies that look like grown men freak me out, like those medieval paintings by so-called masters, where they'd make the face of little baby Jesus look like an ancient constipated banker. If that's what God really looks like, it's no wonder we've done what we've done to the earth. Maybe you can repair what we spent lifetimes taking apart, replace some screws, oil some hinges. This might sound impossible, but have you ever looked at yourselves? Seriously, take a quick look at a walrus face and tell me how that's possible. Everything about it defies the laws of physics. You will learn to exist beyond the reach of nature. You will learn to slow your own heartbeat to preserve oxygen while diving to depths of over 900 feet. You will stay awake for up to 3 consecutive days while swimming on the open sea. And when the ocean is too rough, so terrible with longing, so ruptured with heartache, you will find a small island of stone or ice offering refuge. It will be difficult to climb from this water, but because there's hope for us all, you will hoist yourself up, using only your front teeth and the muscles in your face to drag your body onto the shore. Thanks, everyone. And now I get to introduce Carolyn Oliver, and what I would rather do is just read the foreword I wrote for this book, but that feels like cheating. So, but if you want to see how I would really like to introduce her work, please get her book and read that. But for tonight, I'll say it's a pleasure to introduce Carolyn. And I was recently asked when judging this contest, what drew me to her book, what made Inside the Storm, I Want to Touch the Tremble stand out. And I could give any number of answers to that. I could cite the collection's range, both in approach, there are phrastic poems, guzzles, epistolary poems, and so on, but also the collection's emotional range, how it allows wonder and dread to exist side by side. Or I could talk about the book being willing to ask some big questions and sit inside the complexity of those questions. But more than anything, I think the thing that made this collection stand out to me is something that's much simpler than any of that and obvious, but also harder to explain. It comes down to this. These are just good poems. And after my first reading, I found myself thinking about a number of those poems later that day and then the next day. And when doing my second reading of the book, I found myself thinking, I wish I had a way to share these poems with people. And then thinking, oh, right, I do have a way to share this book with people. And that settled it. So if you haven't read her work yet, then I'm excited for you to get to experience some of her poems for the first time. Carolyn Oliver is the author of this book, Inside the Storm, I Want to Touch the Tremble, and her second book, The Alcestis Machine, will be published by Acre Books in 2024. She's the recipient of the Goldstein Prize from Michigan Quarterly Review and the E.E. Cummings Prize from NEPC, and she's also the author of 3 poetry chapbooks. Her poems appear in Poetry Daily, Copper Nickel, Beloit Poetry Journal, Southern Indiana Review, At Length, and elsewhere. She was born in Buffalo, raised in Ohio, and now lives in Massachusetts, where she's the editor of the Worcester Review. Carolyn also pronounces Worcester like someone who's lived in that area forever, and has tried to coach me on its pronunciation for most of today, and I've probably already messed it up. Carolyn's favorite color is purple. She is a big fan of dinosaurs, stained glass, rocks, and the Boston Celtics. And now, traveling all the way from snowy New England for your artistic delight and listening enchantment, please welcome Carolyn Oliver.
I really wish that I had read first. On the other hand, it really makes you feel a lot less nervous when you spend the first part of the reading laughing really hard. Thank you so much, Matthew. I'm really thrilled and honored to be here. And thank you to Matthew, thank you Sadie and Alan and Aristotle and Hannah and everyone at the University of Utah Press and here at the University of Utah. You've all been lovely and friendly and welcoming. I love Matthew's work as much as the next person in this room now does. I hope you all go out and buy all of his books. So I'm actually going to read first a poem that is not in this book. It is an epistolary poem, and this is my Matthew Olzmann tribute poem. To the woman at the NASCAR race, cheering only for the winless drivers. You know not to trust luck or easy money. I could tell by the way you ignored the casino owner who started the race, and the Yeti-toting college boys in their boat shoes, gawking at your orange bra top, a throwback with the Tide logo printed across its front. Fearless as a Gerber a daisy, that top, and oh, how I admired the sly joke about good, clean fun, once I realized it actually read tits. How I wished for you always the luxury the teenager who sat in front of us must feel, the heedless, hopeful way she draped her hair over the bleachers, letting it frizz in the mist just to get some air on her neck. You smiled at her. There must be a line long as this racetrack of people you've comforted with whatever you had in your purse. Tissues, peppermints wrapped in cellophane, Tampax, loose change. I lost you in the rain after you draped a faded beach towel, one you must have brought from home, over your shoulders. But I think maybe I saw you again, in the windsock at the helipad, flinging its orange at the relentless low sky, or in the helicopter, ready, at once forlorn and giddy, that today nobody needed saving. And this is from. My son asks if I would rather live in a house infested by bees or a house infested by koalas. Late summer, hurricane scraps batter the crabapple that didn't bloom this year, peeling open a paper nest high in the branches. Pitiless, I hope it's empty. Hope they're gone, the wasps. All these hot weeks, they've refused my offering of phlox and milkweed, sunflowers and ruby buckwheat. Instead, they've stalked the raised beds of vegetables I should tend, patrolled the deck when I need to rest, skimmed my neck for a flinch. Allergic to, my father as a child had a friend whose mother died, suffocated when a wasp or a bee stung her throat. So my son's question. Survival means koalas on the stairs, lamps turn boughs, menthol in the mouth. Means marked territories and the slow click of claws in the dark, days safe in a house full of sleep. But sometimes it feels right to tell you this. Sometimes, inside the storm, I want to touch the tremble of a colony warming its queen. I want walls seeping honey. I want a willing tongue. This poem is called Convent. These are the sisters who stay home with God and listen. Their walls are cream and gray and green, and every corner is clean and quiet. Because anyone could be a saint in the making, someone believes I could belong here, like the oak furniture built to outlive this century and the next. Like the nun I follow, I too could wear sensible shoes, give brief tours to bookish girls who memorize saints' attributes and patronages, their histories of violence and illness, girls who try not to ruminate over their tormented bodies never rotting, girls who hunger for a glimpse of the little gilded houses built to rest their relics, queer girls who will never pray here. I want to ask her, this nun, this complexity dressed in simple clothes, why she lives with a man I suspect is never there, or is there but never speaks. I wish I could ask if she's ever wanted to leave her careful sisters who tend the garden, clean the kitchen, try to mend the torn world with their hours and prayers. If she wants to step out now, through the unguarded door, go down the gateless drive, take just an hour's walk along the boulevard lined with broad lawns and Tudor mansions, a walk which would carry her to the people she trusts to the care of her God, and the city they fill with their breath and their noise and their desires and their injustices, to the rapid stop in Severance Hall, then the many-windowed library and paintings cool and safe in the museum. Then to the botanical garden, where someone has arranged the sunlight just so, over cacti and papaya trees, over palms and epiphytes that rely on their strong bodies as they reach into space that welcomes them, as they imagine they need only air to live. One of the threads that runs through this book is a series of poems about Eve, and many of them are dialogues, which are a little bit tricky to read. So I'm going to read one of the monologues, which is called Eve Studies Saison's The Basket of Apples. Temptation's lesson says, choose the uncontested one, pear-shaped, alone. Red creeping along its side the way a blush steals over a man's cheek when he comes. But I want the one in the middle, the sweet green that holds its shape, the round, sour taste of knowledge. I want perfection. I want what's mine. And if you think that table's impossible, try obedience. This poem is called Reading Szymborska Under a Harvest Moon. Though I don't know a word of Polish, or even how to pronounce the consonants bunched like root vegetables or variables, I adore her poems offered this way, the spine-shadowed curve, a double tilde dividing original and English versions. Like scrolling algebra equations the teacher checks years ago, that September I spend hoping to grow unnoticed among the rows of desks, while behind me the window, open against the heat, flaunts its tantalizing view down into the courtyard, where amber afternoon conceals two who sow the quiet with their kisses, their murmurs, while at the chalkboard a girl more sedulous than I, less struck with fear and wonder, and wants new acreage, labors through a problem whose solution becomes somehow a crop of possibilities I won't gather, because my attention's owed to other pastures, tilling the sounds below for sense, just as now I pick out an E for and, chas for time, delighted at this minor unearthing, until I remember a word can mean more than once, like turn, crane, field, fair, lie, sign, strike, quick. Like magazine, a word you think you know, a place to hold what might explode. This poem is Dead Reckoning, and it's in memory of my grandfather, who was a navigator on a B-17 during World War II. And if you've never seen a B-17, it is a giant bombing machine. And the front of it is glass. And you can imagine how terrifying it would be doing night runs when you have flak coming at you and glass in between you and 10,000 feet of falling. Dead Reckoning. A boy is a bomb in the wrong hands. Once they taught boys how to take flight, some to shoot, some to sight, and one to show them the way, hunched in a glass room over the long dark curves of breathless cold, exploding boys. Dead Reckoning, a watch, a map, a pencil, a view, and all the boys waiting for the drop. Raised Bombay doors are wings bleeding light. Pressed between them, my boy balances on a beam 4 feet high, afraid he'll be loosed, howling to strike the earth. No hands to hold him. On a school morning in mid-October, I called my friend who lives in the mountains, and while we talked, I paced by the window, my attention caught not by the 2 pines, their branches pitched high to block any glimpse beyond the cottage whose red door's been shut since the owner died some months ago. No, I couldn't see past the mauve hydrangeas because a man stood there pointing a gun, a long gun aimed into the muted blooms. Between us, cruisers and blue trucks swarmed, closed the state highway, spilled out more men laughing. For a long time, nothing happened but the rain. The armed man disappeared, the others too. The red door held back a secret. The storm covered its tracks, and the men returned, hunched, no guns, just a tarp in their hands, hauling 600 pounds of still and silent moose toward the waiting pickup wedged in the gap of the neat stone wall. They heaved, and in she slid, snug against the tailgate. Her head was bound muzzle to ear in hunter's orange to stop a bite or send a sign, unclear. From our fences, the motorcade snaked west for woods, a place to wake joy, the moose. I was telling her, my beautiful friend who lives where the big pines graze thinner air, I was telling her fear is part of it, that sweetness siphons off its weight, sweetness that wakes us early on the last golden maple morning before the wind arrives. Or I tried to tell her, but my throat, just then, couldn't lift the right words out. And here's your marker. I'm about halfway through here. This poem is called The Anchorite to Rising Seas. Oh, prayer comes and goes, tide-like, you know. Lately, I've been occupied swallowing the world, every piece I can remember. Faces, incense, music, the taste of wine on another tongue. Only colors left, gray and brown, maybe green and blue when I can't help myself, but I'm trying to let them go. You understand, don't you, how to take and take a bit more each day? Your sighs so close, now. When you come in, could you bring some purple? Just a little, for the end. I'm going to read a few poems now from the 3rd section of the book. And the 3rd section is dedicated to Eric Van Cleve, who none of you know. And I don't usually read all of these poems, but I wanted to read them here with you tonight because there's so many students here. Eric was my fiance, and he was a poet long before I was a poet, and he died unexpectedly, suddenly, 1 week before his MFA reading, 4 months before our wedding. And these poems are for him. In your copy of Akhmatova's poems, near the end, just one crisp corner springs in your decisive way, over the edge of her 4 elegant lines. Then, the long white winter page. Somewhere a shark, scarred moon hulk, tangles its wake with jade ice, finds nothing promising, rotting, retreats to deeper cold, cradling sea its trawled slow as waiting, since before Antietam's corpses putrefied and were photographed by Lincoln's leave. A sea will sieve for death until we consume ourselves, while parasites devour its eyes to filmy white, hanging tassels pilfering the ice billows, taking the light not all at once, but by patient gradient, from surface to belowest low, just as I have assembled this creature I'll never face, and neglected to remember from which side of the bed you reached for me that first blue morning. And I have one epithalamium too, and this is it. Epithalamium with missing groom. Due time, and under the earth, 1,000 poets' bodies send up their finest blooms. Brides wake to crowns of arums and stephanotis, orange blossoms and roses. I drink to their triumph, toast the bitter bright end of this stifling summer, push old pearls aside and draw the shades against the sky's electric borrowed blue. By noon, I will be wedded to a particular absence. Already I hold each particle of loss the way space cradles comet trails, cannot forget a single mote of dust or ice. Vows halved antiphony, witnesses only the poets, living and dead, spines straight shelved. Music, gulls swept inland, a pair of lungs. Menu, 1 bottle, 2. Sorrows, not drowned, as the ocean cannot drown itself or sound its wine-dark depths. The shore is silk, is home, is children sleeping, close enough it melts. All I touch is sea. After the ceremony, quiet, not peace. Heat batters the afternoon. Elsewhere, brides dance and laugh and forget to eat until their dresses float them into soft night-tangled assurances. I leave my bed. My ring is small enough to fit inside the other without touching, the space between them thin as a veil or wide as a dark, dark channel. Salt-strewn, poet-crossed. On the far side of the world, under a white flag and linked rings, swimmers race for their brief laurels. All night I watch the young and strong, their hearts so big and wet and ready. I'm going to read 3 more poems. Listening to Ray Vaughan Williams on a Tuesday night. Just as the phrase goes thin, so thin mountain air passing through would leave a scar on its transparency, the solo violinist broke the breathless note years ago in summer. Tonight, I close a book, note the oval smudge on its edge. You held your books this way, index finger braced against the spine's opposite, the sternum. Your fingerprint in pencil means you were writing the day you turned these pages, though the margins are First Communion white, a record of that pristine attention you offered other poets. You gave it again and again, as if rehearsing a longer silence. Opening the book once more, I find the inscription I missed, and then your spiky initials inside the back cover. Your letters look always like they want a life off the page, the Y in my name diving twice as deep as the word. And how is it you will never write the poem that's waiting about gasping letters getting the bends? You would know what to do with this Volta. I think I'm supposed to return to the concert, your last summer. I think I'm supposed to return to the fragile second cadenza. I think I am supposed to write about dive and ascent. I am supposed to tell you that bearing witness to the unmeant quiet made me better love to listen, love to breathe. But what I remember now is all that hollow air, no sound, no word could save. Eric, by the way, was really funny, and he was really, really, really good at scansion, such that he could speak to you and he could scan what you were saying while you were saying it. It's a little scary. He wrote an entire sonnet composed of slogans, and somehow it worked. Like, he was fantastic, and I think you would have loved him. This poem is called In Another Life, You Live, and you are the one writing this poem, mid-morning in a sonnet-sized room, tempting window propped open with a student's abandoned Norton, the rest of last night's blueberry pie half finished on a smudged plate, your mouth a little purpled. Dulled pencil drums on your neck while your wayward elbow, oh dearest elbow, is about to send a cup of black coffee sailing. Outside, the wind makes hollows in the willow boughs, a spill of goldenrod halos the creek, and in Spondy's girls fight over the basketball, dare you to intercede. Maybe you will, once this word appears. The one right word to hold how fine it is. Summer come again, salt heat echo in an upstairs song. Local peaches for once achieving their peachy promise. But now your skin kisses the cup, suspends a sense faint, fading, now fallen away. How strange it is to have lived so long. Thank you for letting me read you those poems. I'm going to read one more poem that is not from this book. It's from my next book. And if I can find it, this is the first time I've ever tried doing this with an iPad. I'm not going to lie to you. 1 second. Ha-ha! It's going to work. And the next book is very different, but it has a lot of these Another Life poems, only they include things like vampires. Vampires and, just odd things. And at one point I decided that I was getting a little bit too cute with myself. And I was like, what's a job that I could have that would be really non-glamorous? So this is a poem about a 16th century swineherd. And before I read it, I want to say thank you again for having me. It's been a real pleasure, and I feel very lucky to be here on many levels. So thank you again. Mast year. In another life, I'm a swineherd relearning the forest in pannage season, shadowing the forager pigs turned out into stands of chestnut and oak. Just home from the wars, you find me gathering acorns for one, dog-bitten and slow, near to farrowing. Easy this year, the fallen oak nuts a shore full of smooth pebbles you scoop into the bowl of your shirt, the way my sister holds morning eggs in her apron. I want to touch your new linen, marrow-colored by your sweat. Later, I'll shiver in the gray kirtle I've worn and patched since before you left, alone on a pallet of moss, listening through pig grunt and brook talk for the sound of your step. For now, we tumble our careless harvest before the pen sow, then follow the furrowed loam deep into woods where light narrows, lichen-chilled, and swine feast in the hollows between roots. Here you ask for my news. What I would say. Last spring, I found the ramsons growing thick in ground worst used, stamped and rootled hardest. The bluebells were a river that smelled of mercy. I followed a damselfly to a beach, and there unburied a woman etched in glass of gold and blue, only to cover her glint with earth once more. Instead, I speak of what you are ready to believe. How the midwife saved the priest again, this time from the bloody flux. 2 summers so hot and wet, apples grew large as last pulled turnips, balanced in baskets on our heads, until a sudden spiteful gale, slop of red, the costermonger's widow sliced from the bridge, drowned in half an ell of stream. But when hasn't there been a year of dying and living? To pluck mushrooms for supper, I nudge aside a snuffling pig. With careful fingers, you score a field through its mizzle-blenched hide. Then your steady hands sweep and dive to show me your ship, caravel swift, swerving butterfly against galleons, their green wakes peopled with sea folk, sails snapping like ice-downed branches. You say you missed bread, and in the next breath you sketch a kingly fish bigger than a brace of sheep, its skin not made of scales but crag and rock. Could I have dreamed a life quarried out of the sea? In all my dreams, I'm bone, cold. Still you're spilling. On deck, a clerk taught you letters in salt water, not so difficult, you claim, as herding those first days of pannage time, for you were a swineherd too before you were a soldier. Come sunset, you'll teach me with bark and burnt twigs, but your eyes seek the tallest trees and find only the backbones for ships. I take up my horn to call the swine in for the night. I know you've kept the worst of it from me. Harrow and stench, bellow and slow deaths, the kindness of your dagger in the dark. As I will keep from you the widow's children haunting the rain like starved foxes. This is love, isn't it? Leaving holes in our stories as moths make lace from their hunger. Thank you.
Thank you again. That was lovely reading. Buy their books in the back, right there. Support a local bookstore and 2 writers right here who could sign said books. What a dream. Okay.